Hey, what's up guys? So I did something yesterday that I have never done before. I bought stocks on margin. Yes, I borrowed money to buy stocks. And which stocks did I buy? Well, despite not buying a single share of any of the cruise and airline stocks over the last couple of months, I finally gave in and bought some. Actually, I bought all of them. I have an M1 Finance account, so I created a coronavirus travel stocks pie and added all of the cruise and airline stocks to it. I then signed up for M1 Plus to take advantage of their low 2% annual percentage rate and borrowed $5,000, of which I invested $4,000 into the major cruise lines Carnival, Royal Caribbean, and Norwegian, and the major airlines Delta, United, Southwest, and American Airlines. Although in hindsight, I don't really know how good of an investment American Airlines was because they are the least financially stable of the airlines. But I am using the diversification strategy here, so we'll see how that plays out for me. Oh, and I also bought Boeing because I do like Boeing, and as the airline industry recovers, we should see Boeing stock come back as well. So why did I choose now to invest in the cruise and airline stocks? Well, in one of my previous videos I uploaded back in early May, I said that cruise stocks were a good long-term investment at the time. And I would have bought cruise and airline stocks then, but honestly the stocks I had in my portfolio were doing really well. So the biggest thing you have to realize is that I haven't been sitting around waiting to invest in cruise and airline stocks with all my money sitting in cash. I have stayed 100% invested throughout this pandemic in my favorite high growth stocks, and a lot of those stocks have done really well, with most of them fully rebounding from their coronavirus lows. So even though cruise and airline stocks have rallied massively from their coronavirus lows, I have still made money, and maybe even more money from the other stocks I've owned over the last couple of months than if I would have invested in travel stocks. And while I don't believe in timing the market, I do think that the recent momentum in cruise and airline stocks shows that these stocks might be ready to catch up to the broader market. So in this video, I will discuss some positive coronavirus news, and then I will discuss my strategy with these travel stocks in terms of how long I plan to hold them and what happens if I am wrong. But first, there is one thing that you need to understand about the stock market, and that is that stocks tend to price in future events before they happen. Meaning that by the time the pandemic is over and life is back to normal, the travel stocks will have already rebounded. So while we are not out of the woods yet when it comes to coronavirus, positive news right now will have a big effect on the stock price. So let's get into the positive coronavirus news that has come out over the past week. For one, a lot of countries and states are beginning to reopen. New York, the hardest hit state in the US, officially entered phase 1 of reopening yesterday, with an estimated 400,000 workers going back to work. And Italy, the worst hit country early on in the pandemic, is opening up its borders to tourists, which is a huge milestone for them. In addition to New York and Italy, New Zealand also reported no new cases or active cases in the entire country, which effectively means that they have beaten coronavirus completely, which is a really, really good sign. That being said, there is still a lot of work to be done, but it seems like a lot of countries are starting to trend down when it comes to current cases of coronavirus. The exception to this, however, is that South American countries such as Brazil are getting hit pretty hard right now, but I expect them to flatten the curve rather quickly. You also have good news from the World Health Organization, who announced that asymptomatic carriers are unlikely to transmit coronavirus. Although they clarified those statements, since some people took that to mean that asymptomatic carriers could not transmit the virus, which is untrue. But nonetheless, the studies have been showing low rates of transmission from asymptomatic carriers, which is good news. I also found an article showing that for the period between May 17th and June 3rd, bookings on Airbnb.com were up compared to the same period a year ago, signaling that people are ready to travel and be done with the lockdowns. And that brings me to my next point, which is the George Floyd protests. And I bring up the protests because it shows that if the media stops talking about coronavirus, then people are less likely to care about it. And if people forget about coronavirus, then they are more likely to travel and go do things such as take a cruise or get on a plane. Also, the whole point of the lockdowns was to flatten the curve so that we did not overwhelm our healthcare system, which I think we have effectively accomplished. And in my opinion, I think it is very unlikely that we will see mass lockdowns again, even if coronavirus does spike later in the year. So overall, very positive news with a lot of countries reopening, which means that travel is likely to resume soon. So let's move on to my strategy with these travel stocks. I am a buy and hold investor, and I consistently transfer money to my investments each week regardless of the price. So for me, I try not to speculate, and I do like buying stocks of larger, more well-established companies. And travel stocks such as the airline and cruise stocks that I bought fit the bill for stocks I can comfortably invest in. However, I really didn't want to sell any of the stocks I already had because I have quite a bit of capital gains in these stocks, and I didn't want to realize those gains because then I would be required to pay taxes on them. So that is why I decided to open a margin account and borrow the money to buy these travel stocks. And my plan is to hold on to these stocks for at least a year. That's my target because at that point the short-term gains will turn into long-term gains. But more importantly, I am strictly looking at taking advantage of the rebound in these stocks. And once that happens, there are other stocks I would rather hold long term. So I will continue to put my own money into non-travel stocks and will use the borrowed money to see if I can achieve some nice short-term gains with these cruise and airline stocks. For me, I do not feel like I am speculating because I do believe cruise and airline stocks are undervalued at the moment and that they do have intrinsic value that makes them more than just a speculative stock. But it's always been for me about putting my money where I can get the highest returns. And like I said, with all the other stocks I own hitting new 52-week highs and travel stocks still lagging the broader market, I felt like it was time to make a calculated decision to buy these travel stocks in hopes that these stocks can catch up to the broader market. And the quicker they can catch up, the better. So let's talk about what could happen if I am wrong. Because as investors, it is important to factor in worst case scenarios and understand what could happen if things go terribly wrong. So let's say that coronavirus cases spike in the fall and travel stocks drop. Well, I am taking a year-long investment time horizon with these stocks, which means I will most likely just hang on for the ride and wait for them to recover. The next doomsday scenario question is, what if some of the companies go bankrupt? And that is where diversification comes in. I am buying all the major cruise and airline stocks, so if one does go bankrupt, then I don't lose all my money. But I don't think it's likely that all of them will go bankrupt, and in my opinion, one or maybe even two is the max that would go bankrupt if things did suddenly get worse. Another doomsday scenario would be if they never recovered and traded flat for an entire year. Well, in that case, I would sell to pay back the margin loan I took out, and I would pay the interest on the loan, which right now is only costing me around $100 a year. So not too bad in my opinion. Also keep in mind that any new money I put into the account will be my own money, and it will go to the other non-travel related stocks I own. Therefore, if I am wrong about these travel stocks rebounding, hopefully the other stocks I own will appreciate during that time. Of course, you also have the possibility of a maintenance call on your account, which is where the value of your investments drops so much that the broker sells some of your stocks to cover the loan. But that is unlikely since I am only borrowing 35% of my available credit right now, and my portfolio would have to drop by 85% to incur a maintenance call. So that too is a very unlikely situation. So there you guys have it. That is my strategy and reasoning behind why I waited until now to buy cruise and airline stocks. And I look forward to keeping you updated on how this short-term play works out for me. And before I end this video, I think there is a really important lesson you can learn from what I am doing, whether you are a beginner or an advanced investor. And that is, don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone and take a calculated risk. I say calculated risk because I don't want you making bad investment decisions. But taking on more risk is a way to maximize your returns. And if you have convictions about making an investment and you have done your research, you should feel confident in taking on that additional risk. For me, with these travel stocks, I have already made 3 videos discussing them and have put in probably 40 hours of research into these stocks already. So when I read the news and saw how these stocks were rebounding, I said to myself, go for it, Justin. So that's what I'm encouraging you to do as well. Do your research and make confident investment decisions. So thanks for watching, guys, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you have not done so already, and hit that like button, and while you're at it, go ahead and drop a comment below. So again, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.